Hey guys, Infidel1258 here. Today I'm going to get into another frequently asked question video. I'm going to grab one comment from a recent video. I don't know what they say in there, so you'll be surprised just like me. And if that sounds interesting, stick around. Otherwise, check out the next video. Let's do it. Okay. So I've been, like I said in a couple recent videos, things have been busy. I've been unable to create a lot of content. So I'm trying to get back on the horse here. And so that's why usually we would grab 3 comments from 3 recent videos, but we're just doing one. Hopefully I'll grab something with a bit of a sort of, there's some conversational ups and downs. Let's look at this one here. My Financial Journey drops in on a comment on a recent video where I was talking about that proposal to update the stats around Nidhogger. If you don't know what that conversation was about, Nidhogger was a legendary airdrop summoner within the Rebellion set. So this card is one of 6 airdrops that were chosen and sort of directed a little bit by the community. And Nidhogger was essentially also a reward to the highest level of investor or group of investors within the Rebellion card pack sale. And so that card's underwhelming. The stats and the effectiveness of that card are, let's say, limited. I'm going to pull it up on the screen here. So this one it's underwhelming. And I will admit that, and I have admitted that. I like the card. I still play with it. I want a max copy. I think it's better than some people give it credit for. And yet, it's clearly not nearly as good as some of the other Rebellion monsters. If I show you the summoners from Rebellion, the legendaries in particular, I mean, Tofu is way better. Lorcus better. And there's a bit of a, okay, so Tofu, way better, not even like a total different dimension of success. Risk Eldrath, I think also way better. Lorcus to me, although the price reflects you guys love Lorcus better than you like Drath, my opinion, Lorcus is like, yes, better, but it's like more close, let's say. But then you've got like a Kane and Elias Pruitt and Cryptic's, again, another really talented one. I think the low of the low here is probably Pruitt and then Nidhogger and maybe a Kane, and possibly in that order, but there's room to negotiate that conversation. And then depending on the league, you might say Drath or Lorcus are like next, and then it probably is like Cryptic or Tofu, but again, there's so much room for debate in there. And yet, despite it being at the low end of this totem pole, so I would argue it's still worth having. It's still a fun card. It's still powerful in its own niche. And the feedback, though, was that it's terrible and it needs to be changed. And it was a very close vote. I won't say much more about that because you already probably know the details around what happened. People wanted to change the stats after it had been released. And my main argument was like, that's not something we do. We generally speaking, once things are released, we don't go back and retroactively change. And I think that would set a bad precedent. Let's see what My Financial Journey said about that. He said, you talk about not having one card be a 10 and the next one be a 4 out of 10. I wasn't around during Untamed times, but is that not how it worked in Untamed? Chancius, Camilla, Lyre, all 4 out of 10, but then Kitty and Yoda 10 out of 10. Were people yelling to change cards after they released those ones back then? I'd 100% vote in favor of a proposal that prohibits altering stats after production release. That is one of the conclusions that I think maybe the commenter in that video had suggested. And I actually, circling back to that right now, yeah, I agree. I really do think it makes some sense to strongly consider a prohibition on editing the stats of a card retroactively. In my opinion, if we want to build a strength and confidence in the card issuances, like what are the value of the non-fungible tokens in Splinterlands, we shouldn't edit their stats and abilities after the fact. That would, in my opinion, undermine the value proposition of these cards. And so that's my 2 cents. And I think My Financial Journey agrees with that. I just want to quickly talk on this issue of the 4 out of 10s from Untamed. I would first say with respect to Rebellion, I'm not sure I would argue these are 4 out of 10s. Maybe I would, as I look at it again with fresh eyes today, I would probably say, yeah, Tofu is, a 10 out of 10. There might not be a better summoner in the game. And I'm saying it might be better. It's probably better than Kitty. If I'm, I think it probably is. At least they're neck and neck. And then Yodin would be, in my mind, like a third, who goes next? Just off the top of my head, probably I go Drath. For me, I use this card all the time. Then I might go Lorcus. Then I might go Llama. And so Untamed and Rebellion in many respects are running neck and neck if you want to analyze which has the best summoners. But then to say something like, I don't know if I said in that video, Nidhogger was a 4 out of 10. Because right now I'm feeling like, as I think about it, I like playing with it. Yes, it has limited functionality as compared to something like Tofu. But when you're standing next to a 10 out of 10, it makes a card feel less functional, less useless, or yes, more useless and less useful. And so I guess I'm saying, limited budget, everything considered, Nidhogger's not a strong contender, but I still think it's fun. I want it. I have one. I have a level 3. I'm getting bogged in the weeds around the technicality of whether it's a 4 out of 10. I'm not sure if I agree with that piece of the conversation. I'm going to move away from that specific fact, and I'm going to get into a more broad conversation now around how does this compare to Untamed? As I alluded to with respect to the top tier of Untamed, yeah, there definitely was an upper echelon and a lower class. And that's going to be the case, I think, with every release. To the best of the developer's abilities, these cards are designed in a way that, they're trying to make maximum fun and functionality, but there's so much complication and nuance in terms of how things synergize with one another. It's never just, how will the stats on this card work? Is that good, bad, or broken? It's far more complicated because data and stats on this one summoner then have to get intertwined with the monsters and their synergies and abilities within that splinter or splinters. And so to imagine a dragon summoner that had, X, Y, and Z buffs is to then calculate how the X, Y, and Z buffs will engage and interact with every single splinter. Whereas imagining Tofu's implications while being designed is like, what's it going to do with the earth or with the life splinters? And neutral, of course. And so my point is, it's far more complicated than saying, let's just design a 4 out of 10, a 5 out of 10, a 10 out of 10. Let's make them all equal at 7 out of 10s. That would be, I think that's a bit of what we saw with Chaos Legion. If I'm trying to give a bit more, let's say, background, I think with Chaos Legion, we saw more balance across the legendary summoners in particular. And again, there's winners and losers here. Like Lily is the best of these. But then I do think these all come in a tighter group of effectiveness than any other legendary release. Untamed, Rebellion, or even Rift. Rift Watchers didn't have Rebellion, or Rift Watchers didn't have legendaries. So I think the long and the short of the answer to your question is that, of course, Untamed had a lot of this too. Kitty was by far the best. Jotun was definitely a clear number 2. A lot of people said Mimosa and Lyre and Chancius were, relatively ineffective. And of course they have their space too. Like Mimosas can be very solid, especially before there was a reverse cleanse, which we now see in the game. Having affliction across the whole enemy team where they couldn't heal they couldn't restore or remove that affliction was actually pretty useful in certain contexts. And Chancius, man, even today I find a lot of functionality in Chancius. A lot of the times as we bring in things like Void Armor, my point would just be this. I really firmly, strongly believe that all the cards in Splinterlands have their moment and their niche. And some cards have a broader niche of effectiveness. Something like Speed and Heal are clearly have a wider range of effectiveness than, for instance, Blind and Archery Reflect. Because Blind, for instance, there are rule sets where everybody has True Strike, and then Blind does nothing. There are situations where where you can't use archery units. And so you can imagine how a card like this carries less effectiveness than +2 speed. Sure, you can see reverse speed rule sets, but even in reverse speed rule sets, the way Byzantine was designed, the True Strike will then counteract the negativeness of the speed. And so, yeah, some cards are going to be 10 out of 10s, and I don't think the team sets out to do that. But I do think we, the audience, often misunderstand how complicated it would be to drive all of them into a closer, tighter group. That's maybe the place I want to land this plane. I think when we look back at any card release, we should do so with the understanding that it's so challenging to make a set of summoners that are available within their own unique splinter or splinters, especially now that the multi-element are possible, and the synergies that are made possible in those combinations, I think make it exceedingly difficult. And so that's a piece that I want to focus on and maybe and finish the video with. I just don't think we see that. I don't think we're saying that enough. I think when we look at how Rebellion has been designed, we are failing to acknowledge that often. Clearly Tofu was best and Nidhogger's not as good. That's just the way that it is, and I would prefer if we don't edit stats retroactively. But aside from all those considerations, to me, the story that is undertold or underdiscussed is the fact that it's super complicated to make all summoners be in this tight window of effectiveness. And the power creep that has happened at times isn't intentional. It's just a part of the complicated challenge of designing cards within an ecosystem of cards where one monster can radically affect the implementation and effectiveness of one summoner. And then the interplay between cards makes that even more magnified. Thanks, guys, for your time and attention. Have an amazing day. God bless.